All right, so I said I'd kind of come back to a new video on this. So I have a 2006 KLR, and basically I went to change the doohickey. If you don't know, just Google it. It's just like a part that holds tension on the counterbalancer chain. And I opened up the case, and the doohickey was broken, as you can see right here. There's my broken doohickey. The top is snapped completely off, missing. And when I went to look for the spring, which is usually right here, connecting to there, it was also just gone. And I was like, okay. So I ended up having to take the whole clutch side off to enable me to get at fishing out the spring and hopefully the doohickey piece. Never found the small piece of the doohickey. I'm kind of hoping it went out with the oil previously. But I did find the spring. There's the spring right there. You can see it's in 3 pieces. I had to fish it out of the bottom of the crankcase. And just to kind of peace of mind, I ended up flushing out the whole crankcase with gasoline, trying to loosen up the oil that might be holding down the pieces of the doohickey. And then I took strong magnet along the bottom and just dragged it underneath, back and forth, like a super huge strong magnet. And I had a fishing magnet in all these areas that expose the crankcase within the side covers, and couldn't find anything. And I fished for like a good few hours, if I'm being honest, and it was terrible. So anyways, I kind of decided, you know what, I'm assuming it went out with the oil because it's such a small piece. You can see it's this little loop on the top of that right there. And yeah, so I just decided I'm gonna clean off all these gaskets and get it back together, and I got a Eagle Mike magnetic drain plug, low profile one. So I'm hoping if there is any residual metal in the engine, that drain plug is going to catch everything. And I'm actually gonna run the oil. I have some extra oil just sitting around here. I'm just gonna run an oil change, circulate oil for a couple days, and then drain it, and hope that maybe I see something on the magnetic drain plug. So anyways, so what I did now is I prepped the surfaces. I scraped up all the old gaskets. I had very, very carefully used a razor blade. I did that inside clutch cover, and I did the stator cover. I had to do the water pump as well. Not ideal. Like, I didn't want to take all this off. It was just the only way that I was going to find the spring. So if you are considering not changing your doo and just running a stock one, the only thing I can say is if you have an old Gen 1 KLR, just change the doohickey. Is it worth going through all this? Like, this is what happened to me. My bike is a 2006 and it has 23,000 kilometers, so 13,000 miles, that's it. And it was driven by an older person, very, very conservatively. So it's peace of mind. So I can't recommend it enough. I know people don't believe. They say, don't drink the Kool-Aid. The doo isn't real. Yeah, it completely exploded in my engine. So I think it's reason to change your doo. And it takes such little time if you catch it before me. So like, let me be an example of what will happen to you if you have an older Gen KLR. The newer ones, they have a stronger spring and a stronger doohickey. And, but they still recommend, it still would be maybe ideal for you to change it out. And then your bike's indestructible. And it's like, what is it, like 50 bucks or something for the part from Eagle Mike? Anyways, so maybe consider changing your doohickey. Use me as a reference to know that, yeah, you're running the risk of having to open both sides of your engine and wait for gaskets for a month. So that's what happened to me. I have everything labeled. I'm gonna start to put this all back together, and I'll give you guys an update in a minute. So I did end up drilling a hole for the torsion spring. I got a torsion spring from Eagle Mike and the doohickey from Eagle Mike. The thing I'm kind of was curious about, I don't know if this happened to anybody else, but I got the drill bit from Eagle Mike, and as you can see, it broke like 2 seconds into me drilling, and maybe it was my fault and I should have been pressing a little bit lighter. I don't know. I genuinely wasn't pressing that hard. I ended up having another drill bit that's stronger in my garage, so I used that to finish the job. So yeah, be gentle with the drill bit, learned from me. So yeah, I have these all perfectly scraped. I have the OEM gaskets, so I am going to get those placed and then torque down these stator cover bolts to spec. I installed the torsion spring. I don't know if that's good lighting, you can see. So I got the torsion spring on and the Eagle Mike Doohickey. I did have quite a bit of trouble. This seems really dark to me. I did have quite a bit of trouble with the torsion spring, hooking it around the Doohickey. Eagle Mike recommends not using a pliers to do so because you can compromise the dexterity of the spring. So I tried to use my hands, but in the end I had to use a tiny bit of needle nose pliers, and then I pushed it in with my finger, make sure it's perfectly seated. Yeah, I am going to put the stator cover gasket on, and then I'm going to put the bolts in and I'm going to torque it down. I know if you're experienced, you can try to torque everything by hand, but like it says 78 inch-pounds torque. So just get a torque wrench. Borrow it from somebody like I did. So I got the Doohickey on, I got the starter gear in place. It took me a minute to get the wood-drift key seated so this rotor could slip over it. I didn't feel like it was properly seated, but it ended up being properly seated. I just did 15 foot-pounds of torque, took the bolt out. Multiple sources told me to make sure the bolt was clean. So I cleaned the bolt with contact cleaner or like brake cleaner, and then I put it back in, torqued it down to 85 foot-pounds torque, and made sure there was still play. Like you should be able to turn it with one finger very easily. And then everything checked out. So then I torqued it down to 144 foot-pounds torque. And yeah, it still plays freely with one finger. And now I'm going to put the rest of the starter gears on, those two. So I have the starter gears in place. Funny story, I actually put them on backwards and I was like, wow, these spin so freely. And then for a minute, luckily I thought about it and I was just like, wait a minute. It's like they're supposed to turn this big starter gear. So that doesn't work. Made sure they were really lubricated with 20W50 some oil, just oil. Kicking around, and then I'm gonna put the gasket on this stator cover and then hopefully torque it down. All right, so I got the stator cover on. Probably give it a nice clean. Torqued everything down to 78 inch-pounds. Put the cover back on, put the gear changing lever back on, and then I also popped this off and I adjusted the Doohickey. And now that that's done, it's time to go over to the big side and finish the clutch side and the water pump, and then I should be good. So I got the clutch side back on. I did have a bit of trouble with the gasket staying in place, so I had to really pin it up a bit with my fingers. And I know you can tack it with some gasket tacker, like gasket sealant, but I had to just skim a tiny bit underneath, so that held it in place a bit because there was a little bit of a nick. And then other than that, the gasket was the hardest part. You have to keep your clutch engaged. You have to keep it fully out, so when you put it on, you rotate it and then it pulls onto the clutch and it actually will engage. So make sure you do that. Water pump was easy. Yeah, clipped the tubes back on, put the gasket on, torqued everything down to spec. About to put a new oil filter in. I have to put coolant back into the radiator, and then I'm gonna press the start button. I'm a little bit nervous. I want it to work good. I want to make sure everything went back together properly, so you guys can see that happen. It's gonna be stressful. Let's go. So I put everything back together. I did a quick once over, checked all the gaskets, refilled it with oil, put the oil filter in. Yeah, put the coolant in. Doesn't seem to be leaking anywhere. The only reason I'm a little worried is when I was changing the Doohickey, a part kind of moved a bit and I was concerned that it would mess up the timing of the counterbalancer chain. So here we go, the moment of truth. I'm nervous. This is hilarious. so surprised at how quiet this area is now. That's incredible. And there's no leaks coming from the clutch or the water pump. There's way less of like a clapping and clicking. It's almost just like the muffler or the exhaust is the majority of the noise. That's amazing. Wow, this is a big win. We're back.